Really, for shielding songs, I kind of thought this was going to be the last thing that I might put out. I was so poorly. I feel like if I never created anything again, shielding songs will have done its job of what I wanted to say about what it means to be human. This letter of love, this huge generosity. If you read this, it means I've died, I'm not coming back, but kiss the children for me.
Jessica Curry, thank you for joining me today. Where are you zooming in from?
Zooming in from a very hot, sunny Hove, which is in the south of England, right by the sea, which is nice, but it is sweltering.
Oh.
But we're going to get through it with that steely British spirit.
Yes, you will. You've seen worse, huh? I see a lovely piano in the background. What kind of piano do you have?
So I've got a Bechstein, but it's interesting, as I've been doing interviews, lots of people ask me about it. And it's a weird one because I have a disease called ankylosing spondylitis. It's an autoimmune inflammatory disease. So it causes extra calcium to grow in the body. So things fuse together like the vertebrae in your spine, your ribs, your hips. It's really, really painful. It also affects the eyes. It can affect other organs and the heart as well. And it causes a lot of fatigue. So it's a really, really challenging disease to live with on a daily basis, actually.
Wow. And does it affects the joints in your fingers also?
Yeah, so I get a lot of swelling in my hands. This is the reality of AS. So they're a lot of stiffness, a lot of swelling. And of course, that's really hard as a musician. So I used to be a cellist. That's gone completely now. So I'm learning to make friends with her again at the moment, because I'm sure, as you know, when as a musician, dexterity and proficiency and skill is really important. That's what we pride ourselves on. So it's a really strange and new challenge for me to make friends with her again at the moment.
Sometimes, though, beautiful things are born out of that kind of strife, and your music is a wonderful example of that. I really loved listening to shielding songs.
Thank you.
This album is a mix of new music you composed. Is this correct? New music and also game music that you already had in your back pocket there. How did you decide which of the game music to include?
It was really the pieces that people wrote to me about. So the Mourning tree is a really good example of so many people wrote to me throughout the pandemic and said, I have buried a loved one to the Mourning tree. So the pieces that I chose for the album were a kind of reflection of what people had loved, especially through the pandemic. The Light We Cast from Rapture was another one that people really said, I'm going through the worst time. This music gives me hope.
Do you mind if we listen to the Mourning Tree right now? And it's a beautiful track. I'd love to listen to it.
Thank you. I just kept getting emails and emails. Thank you so much. This music has helped me through this terrible grief. People who couldn't bury their parents and loved ones like I couldn't. And so it kind of felt like it really fit into that theme of care and what it means to actually grieve, as opposed to the just push through it. So this was written for Everybody's Gone to the Rapture, which is about to celebrate its 10th anniversary extraordinarily. But we'd lost my very beloved stepdad a couple of years before we were making the game. And this song is really about, very influenced by my mum. Because she always loved her birds, but after he died, she had this really incredible relationship with the birds in the garden. by Vaughan Williams. Jim Clements, who's an amazing arranger, rearranged The Mourning Tree and Dust and Shadow especially for choir, and he just did a great job reimagining these pieces for London Voices, and I think they're really successful actually. So husband Dan Pinchbeck wrote this text. And yeah, like the nightjar, you left me here to nest in the mourning tree. It's really beautiful.
And this little bit, is that the bird singing?
Yeah.
Beautiful. The choir did a great job on that.
They were absolutely phenomenal. Just their control vocally is always really mind-blowing to me, the way they can just absolutely shape something with such precision. Yeah. Because I do sing, but I'm really bad. I'm always really in awe of people that can just... I understand it more with an instrument. You know, as a pianist or a cellist, I think you've got this intermediary thing that you can literally hit harder or softer. But I kind of think, how do you do it when it's you?
Yeah.
Well, with such precision.
The precision is hard enough just as a soloist, but to get everyone doing the same precision at the same time in that 20-person choir, that's...
Exactly. No, they're so together. And I think what I love about London Voices particularly is they do have that emotional understanding, because it can be quite cold choral singing, I find. I don't come from a classical background, and sometimes I think there's this wall here of removal. I don't connect with this. Mm-hmm. But I think because London Voices do a lot of media performing as well, like they sing on game and film soundtracks, they're not afraid of emotion. They haven't had it trained that this is the bad thing and you don't want to be overboard or OTT. They're really in touch with their emotional side of their voices, and that's what I love about them.
Yeah, choir. I'm a singer, and I hate singing in choirs because it's very much don't stick out, don't put your emotion in, and exactly what you're saying. And I don't hear that there. Everyone sounds very individual, but well blended individual.
There's a rigidity, isn't there, sometimes to choral singing. Again, it's like, when I sang in a choir in Brighton, they were like, just don't ever move. You all wear exactly the same thing. And I kind of understand it, because you don't want anyone pulling focus. The blend is important, but it goes past. I was actually banned from coming out on stage once because I had the wrong pop socks on.
Uh-oh.
And I'd brought the choir into disrepute, Susanna.
What color were they?
Well, they were black, but they were the wrong length. You could see my ankle.
Oh no, how risque.
No, there was a flash of flesh. God forbid. And that is what I can't really understand. Again, because I didn't come from that background. I'm the first person in my family to play an instrument. So I don't come from the understanding of these rules. It was like I presented an evening of games music at the Royal Albert Hall, and you could see that the gamers in the audience were terrified because they didn't know when to clap, how to behave in the hall. It's very intimidating, beautiful space. And at the very beginning, I just got up on stage and I said, we're not doing this. We're not doing this tonight. This is going to be something else. And it was just the most raucous, fun, joyous, communicative, entertaining evening. And I don't know. I think you may be getting the idea about me after nearly an hour of chatting that I am a bit of a tub-thumping, rabble-rousing, door-smashing psycho.
I love it.
Writing very gentle choral music. It's an enigma.
in your music, there's a lot of harmony, but there isn't very much counterpoint, especially between the verses. There's some, but in general,
That's so interesting. Yes.
Singing mostly the same melody line, just different harmonies within it. And I feel like in choral music, that's people go to town with the counterpoint in choral music. But it's not a criticism. I really
no, it's so interesting because I've never thought of it like that.
And I love melody, and I like a strong melody, and it just made it so soothing to just hear everyone singing this one line. I was curious if you did that on purpose.
No, you've blown my mind because you're absolutely. I'm a moron. You're absolutely. No, you're so right. That is something that has never occurred to me, but you're absolutely spot on. And you're right that it is the thing that creates more of a soothing, kind of cohesive sound across the album, probably, actually. Yeah, I'm not, like I said, I'm not classically trained. So I think there's probably part of me that comes from what I know how to do because I've taught myself how to do it, actually. And I think sometimes those constraints can be so interesting in terms of what comes out.
Constraints can be like one of the best things because, it's the person, that's doing the composing, and you're doing it in a new way because of a constraint, and everyone's got some kind of constraint.
Yeah.
So it comes out in a new way because of it. And then I really liked it. I thought it was brilliant.
You've blown my mind with that, though. That's just something that I hadn't really considered that goes across all the pieces. And it's probably why it touches people, actually, because the melodies are very forefronted and very accessible.
Yes, very, very, very. Just
well, you're going to get 10% of everything I earn now because. Sorry, I interrupted what you were going to say.
Well, it also gives you a particular style. I thought, if I were to hear that and I didn't know it was your composition coming through my speaker, I'd be like, oh, I wonder if that's Jessica Curry, because I thought it was a signature kind of sort of sound. So when you're composing, you're hopefully now sitting at your piano and you're coming up with this melody line and you're harmonizing the melody line on the piano. That's my imagination. Is that how it actually works?
So I normally sit at my keyboard rather than my piano, which I've got integrated into my desk so I can record things straight in. And I'm often singing the melody line. And so that's why the second altos always have really good parts in my music because that's my voice part. And the altos are always like, this is amazing, Jess. I'm singing the tune. So it's quite a simple process for me of just literally playing stuff in and recording as I go and then playing. Like most of my friends just write straight into Sibelius. But again, my sight reading, it's passable, but it's not how I think about music. I think about it from singing. And again, I wonder if that goes back to that point of how my music is constructed. I'm not coming at it from such a technical problem to be solved, which is what I hear in some music, which can be really satisfying, actually, and really exciting and enjoyable. But I'd say that I'm normally singing an emotion, if that makes sense, is how it starts.
Yeah, it absolutely does.
We've unlocked my whole musical career in this hour. So funny. It's really funny, Susanna. No one's ever said that to me before. And it's it's such a great point.
I wondered actually if it was, requested of you from the game music, so it wasn't too busy in the game music, or no, you just did it naturally. Okay.
No, I'm just a simpleton, as it turns out.
Hey, it works.
Yeah, well, it's going well so far.
I record with a whole orchestra now. So.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm not ready.
It's all worked out. There's a bigger plan for you.
Exactly.
I want to also, if we could, listen quickly to, this is my favorite one, actually, Kiss the Bairns.
Oh.
So let's listen to that right now. Is this text from your husband as well?
So this is the one that the poet laureate Carol Ann Duffy transformed from the original soldier's letter from the First World War. And he basically wrote to his wife saying, if you read this, it means I've died, I'm not coming back, but kiss the children for me. And you must live, he said, you mustn't live simply for a memory. You must go on and live your life. I mean, it's an extraordinary letter. The poem was phenomenal, and the choir, it makes everyone cry when they hear it, this one. I think, again, especially with what's going on around the world with conflicts at the moment, this idea, especially as a parent, of going, I'm not going to see my child again. This letter of love, this huge generosity.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Again, that simplicity allows that amazing gift that he gave to his wife to shine through, I think, because it really is extraordinary that someone could be on a battlefield in active combat and be able to pull himself together to the point where he could say, this is my gift to you, your life will go on even though I'm not coming home. Yeah. And he says, I've already written to my dad. He's going to sort out all the practical affairs for you, but for you, don't live just with memory. Go forth and live your life and kiss the children. I mean, it's just extraordinarily moving. Funnily enough, I found a picture of him yesterday, which I've never seen before. I'd never looked up his image for some reason. And then all of a sudden I thought, I wonder if there is any record of this soldier, Sergeant Joseph Furness, and there is. And he just looked like a lovely, normal young guy, you know, in an unimaginable situation. I loved writing that one. The words just are a gift to a composer.
Have you looked up his descendants, his children?
No, I'm so shy. Very shy person. I did think about it, but I just thought, I wonder. I know they gave their permission for the letter to be used for the project that I wrote the music for, but yeah, maybe I should send them the piece if they haven't heard it.
It would be very touching for them to hear that.
Yeah, to know that he lives on, that is the wonderful thing about art and music and literature, paintings, that we have this afterlife. And I have to say, that was really, for Shielding Songs, I kind of thought this was going to be the last thing that I might put out. I was so poorly in 2022, and I really did think, if this is going to be the last thing, what do I want it to say? What legacy for me is such a masculine word. It's not something that I identify with very often, but I did want there to be something that I left for people. And I feel like if I never created anything again, Shielding Songs will have done its job of what I wanted to say about what it means to be human.
we never know what we leave behind will turn into, just like that letter turned into your beautiful composition.
Yeah.
But when you put something out into the world where you're saying something very meaningful, it tends to keep on going and turning into all these beautiful things like your music. Shielding songs. The name, is that to do with your health?
Yeah, very much so. So in March 2020, I received a letter from the government saying that I was clinically extremely vulnerable and that if I caught COVID, I'd be much more at risk of catching COVID. And if I did get it, I'd be more at risk of serious illness and or death. So it was a big shock. There wasn't any preparation. The world was in shock at that time, as you know. Everything was kind of unfolding. And my life really changed. So I was already on immunosuppressants because of the disease that I suffer from with AS. So I was always careful when I was out and about anyway. I knew that if I got a cold, it's much harder to recover from that. I could go on for weeks, if not months, and then kind of roll on. So it wasn't like I went from nothing to 100 overnight, because I was already living this very tentative balancing act of, is an event worth it if you could get sick? And if you get sick, you're going to get really poorly. And that's something that people don't really speak about, because I think people are so busy trying to live their daily lives with illness that it's not something that I've read much about. And so I was leading this very isolated life. I was with my husband, Dan, who's amazing, our teenager, Sydney, my mum, and the rescue dog, Della. And so I was out and about before the pandemic, and all of a sudden, we were all locked down, but lockdowns gradually ended and people went back. There's this big phrase, I don't know if it was in America as well, of back to normal, back to normal. That was the obsession. But lots of people with immunosuppressants and these kind of diseases, or blood cancer, or going through cancer treatment, we were kind of left. There was this big thing called Freedom Day in the UK, and it was absolute rejection of all safety overnight. Masks were gone, social distancing was gone.
I didn't know.
It was a really sort of political statement from the Conservative government. But for people like me, it was a bit of a death sentence, going, all of a sudden, all these things that have kept you safe have just gone overnight. So it was a very difficult time. But I decided, probably 3 years in, 2023, I was very mentally ill. I was very lonely. And I thought, I have to do something to bring myself back. I wasn't coming out of it. All my friends had just disappeared. As the mama bear who looked after everybody, they had scattered to the winds. And I thought, no one's coming to rescue me. I have to do something. And so I started cataloguing my past work, because I thought it's something that I can manage. It's something tangible. It's something that I can almost grasp. It's not this big, I'm going to write a concerto. That felt so out of reach. That felt so far away to write more new music. But as I started cataloguing this work, I realized that there was this really strong thread running through everything that I've done, especially the choral work. And it was this sense of responsibility, care. My work is political. It is a clarion call to look after each other. It is about what it means to be human, what it means to love, what it means to be loving, what is the responsibility that goes with a relationship of any kind, whether that's family or a refugee or a husband or being a mother. All of those things kind of went through the work so strongly. And I thought, there's an album here. There is an album for the people who've been through really tough times. And I think my music has always called to people who are going through difficult stuff, actually. I think there's a melancholy but a hopefulness that can pull people through. So there's one new track on the album, Rest With Your Dream, which I wrote for husband Dan, because he really was there for me. And I'd never written him a piece of music before in our 24-year marriage, and it felt like time. So that's kind of how the album came about.
I can't imagine that moment. Unless I really was under a rock, we didn't have such a moment here in the States. It was just kind of one person at a time venturing out and back resuming life. And you're right, some people have never resumed their lives after that. But I can't imagine how, so before we were all isolated, but we were all isolated together. And then suddenly overnight for you, you were isolated alone. And I just can't imagine. I mean, it was lonely enough being isolated together. I can't imagine how isolating that was in that moment, and thereafter just being like, well, everyone else has gone on with their lives, right? Resumed to their former lives. And
there were lots of things going on around that. So when I watched my dad die on Zoom, like many people did, it was unimaginably awful. But at that time, there was a scheme from the government called Eat Out to Help Out, because they wanted to help the hospitality industry, which I completely understand. But I live in a really big tourist town. We're by the sea. Brighton's really famous for partying. So while I was watching my dad die alone in a hospital, asking, when are you coming? When are you coming? He didn't understand why I wasn't there. I was dealing with a city that had never been busier. The restaurants were literally teeming. The pubs were overflowing. The beaches were just party central. And I think those big dichotomies were what drove people like me kind of crazy. Things like Eat Out to Help Out, Freedom Day, our government partying through the pandemic and not even ever being sorry about it. There was no acknowledgement. There was no apology. There was no togetherness. There really was a message of, you are on your own with this. And in terms of mask wearing, I've had people spit at me. I've had people barring at me like I'm a sheep. Brighton, where I live, was the biggest anti-vax community in the country, because it's kind of got that alternative vibe. So people were very anti-mask here. And I think, again, the album for me was about saying, you're not alone. There are people like me who went through this. And just because nobody's talking about it, it doesn't mean it didn't happen. And it was really interesting. When my stepdad died about 10 years ago, people were really sorry and really kind, and they'd say those things that really help. When my dad died, the first thing that people would say was, did he die of COVID? And they would take a step back. And it was like you were contagious. It was plague times. You know, people were like, could I get this from you? There was no vaccine at that point. No one knew what was going on. No one knew if it would affect their children and their babies. So there was just this sense of, I was like a little leper ringing a bell. It was the opposite of sympathy. It was the opposite of condolences. It was, please stay away from me. And the album came from this feeling of going, I cannot let this momentous global event pass. And I don't know what it's like with you, but nobody wants to talk about it here. Everyone's just like, it's done.
Neither side genuinely wants to talk about it. It's like, no, that never happened. It is very interesting, because it's what should be talked about, because, you know, it should be handled better next time. However, whatever side of the aisle you're on, it certainly should be handled better next time, right?
I think as well, I was reading about the 1918 influenza pandemic. And apparently the same thing happened then, that nobody wanted to talk about it afterwards. And there's no literature about it. There's no music. So more people died here than in the Second World War. More people died of flu. But every book I pick up it's set in the Second World War still. And I've been thinking a lot about that and wondering if there's there's a sort of heroism supposedly to dying in battle, but there's a kind of shame around illness, of dying. We have it with cancer. She battled, but she lost. There's a judgment there.
Yes.
And we have this really interesting language around illness. And if you try really hard, somehow you can beat it. And it's not true. And those of us who've been unwell for a really long time, it does us a disservice because, like I said, it's really hard to get out of bed every day when you're in pain and your illness is getting worse. So this album it's almost a manifesto, I'd say, Susanna, actually.
Well, I hear that. The whole album, first of all, is just beautiful from start.
Thank you.
It's just a very elegant way of composing you have, and very deep. It's very interesting because it's choral music, but there are very few to any instruments. It's mostly a cappella choir. And how I heard it was, you have just these lonely voices singing together about their experience, and no one else is really joining them. But
interesting.
This message to give. I don't know if that was your intent with that, but that's how I heard it.
It wasn't, but that blows my mind. That's such a beautiful reading of it, actually, that it is this kind of separation, that it isn't in the world somehow. Yeah, that it is.
Yeah, and even
a crying out almost. Yeah.
And even the choir, it didn't sound like the largest choir. It sounded like a smaller, more intimate choir, which made the album very interesting, because I feel like you either hear no choir or you hear a very large, thick choir. And it was really nice to hear. Again, I felt very intimate listening to it.
Thank you. That's really interesting as well, because it felt really intimate recording it. And one of the decisions that I had to make, of course, as someone who is still effectively shielding, is how do I be in a room safely with lots of people again? And one of my decisions with the size of the choir was, this is the amount of people I can imagine spending these 2 days with without feeling overwhelmed and really worried about getting sick. So there was even in the choices of how the album was built, it had health kind of knitted into it. But what it did mean is that the choir were absolutely focused and together in their intent to make it the very best thing for me. And that was, I think you can hear that. I've worked with London Voices a lot. I really trust them, not only as musicians, they are exceptional at what they do, but I also trust them as people. And one of the things that I have found really hard coming back out into the world is trust. So this first album had to be something meaningful emotionally for me. And they held the music like it was a really little baby. They nurtured it and they gathered me in and they gathered the music in. And when I printed out the choir books, I put the story of each piece of music before the notes. And because the stories are so emotional, one was about how Dan helped me when I watched my dad die. I lost my auntie in the pandemic. There's a piece of music written for her. There's another piece of music written about a First World War soldier, Joseph Furnace, who said, if you read this letter, it means I've died. I'm not coming back to you and the children, but kiss the Bairns for me, kiss the children. So they were reading these stories, and there were tears during the session, which is really unusual because they're professional musicians. They're really good at sounding emotional without necessarily having to feel very deeply all the time. But they put something into that music, I think, especially with the conflicts around the world at the moment, singing about war, singing about hope, singing about responsibility. It meant something to all of us. And that's when you create real gold in a recording studio or in a church, as we were.
Yeah, you can really hear that the color that they gave their voices really brought your music out, I think. How many choir members were there?
So there were 20. and they're really good at creating a rich sound. But like you say, I really like the fact that it isn't this massed choir. I didn't want that. It didn't speak to me. Even if someone had said, I self-financed this album, but if someone had said, you can have that choir, I genuinely would have said no, for that reason of going, it needed to be intimate. It needed to be communicating the message.
Yeah. Then it's almost like it has more meaning, ironically, when fewer people are saying it in that choir context. You can hear every individual person.
Yeah. And choirs make me feel hopeful on a conceptual level, because there is this, I sound really Miss Worldy when I say this, but there is a sort of togetherness. There's literal harmony or unison. And I think the world is so divided. We are so rent asunder, and we have very powerful people who want us to be divided. And there's something about the choir that refuses that concept. It says, no, we can come from different places. We can have different beliefs, but we can sing together. So that was very much core to what I wanted to say as well.
Yeah, no, I love that. Speaking of things to say, the text in your pieces, it's beautiful. The lyrics. Is there two questions about it? Is there a main theme that's running through all the pieces in one? And how did you select the texts?
Such a good question. I read English literature and language at university. I didn't actually study music. So text and language, words, poetry have always been absolutely in me. I'm the daughter of a writer. I'm married to a writer. So we are kind of surrounded by books and text in our houses, and it really matters to us. And so if I'm writing a new piece, I'm really obsessive. I go through so many options and choices. It's something that I think about for maybe even longer than it takes me to write the music, actually. It's so integral. And I know as soon as I found the right text, it kind of something locks in, and it's almost like the music then just writes itself. It's the search for the text that is almost the key that unlocks everything. I've been lucky to work with some incredible people over my musical career. So the piece that I was telling you about, Kiss the Bairns, that letter was taken by the poet laureate at the time, Carol Ann Duffy, and she wrote a poem in response to his letter back to his wife. And then I wrote the music to that. And it's so exquisitely crafted. I often work with my husband, Dan Pinchbeck. His words just blow me away every time. He does this thing where he's really emotional, but he never, as we say, it's a very Northern English phrase. It doesn't give me the gop, like it doesn't make me feel sick. It's not too sweet. Yes. It's not too sweet or sickly. I can't bear it. I've got a big gag reflex when it comes to sentimentality. Mushy. And he straddles this line between being really profound but not insincere. I think we're quite similar in that we write from a very deep place. One of the things that I loved that he did on the album was in the Jesu. We're not religious, but we try and live in a way that we don't harm people. We live by a lot of those tenets, even though we're not believers. It's still really important to us to live in a certain way. But he added some text to the Jesu, which said, divinity alone can't save small boats upturned on the wave. And it was about the refugee crisis here, because people are arriving from Calais every day and lots of them are drowning. Lots of children are drowning every day. As a parent, as a human, it's not something that I can even almost begin to wrap my head around. The boats are watching them. They don't help. And I think for me and Dan in the Jesu, there's this sense of great, pray. Prayer's really important. That communality of belief is really important. It's not something we'd ever denigrate or deny, but there also has to be action at the moment. There has to be people going, this isn't right. We can't watch a child drown. And I think what I'm saying makes the album sound like people are going to go, oh, this is going to be a really heavy listen. But I think it's not, actually. I think my music, again, it provides a lot of solace for people rather than, there is anger in it, but I don't think it's inherent through the texture of the music, if that makes sense.
No, it's very deep, but there's an undertone of optimism to it.
Yeah, and weirdly, I'm very political, but I try and stay optimistic, because I think it's when we give up, that's when inaction starts. You go, well, there's no point in doing anything because it's all so overwhelming. Yeah. So it's really interesting. I'm sure it's the same with you at the moment. The young people here, I'd say sort of 30 downwards, there's a sort of obsession with self that I find really interesting politically. I think because they are simply overwhelmed by the amount of stuff that's going on in the world. So there's a lot of influencers that live in Brighton. They're very drawn to it because it's very beautiful. It's very hip. But I used to walk down the seafront and it would be marches and protests. And now when I walk down, because I'm kind of just a bit out and about again at the moment, and I walked down with Dan, and it was just people filming themselves doing really like Instagrammy things. And they've got amazing bodies, great. But I kind of thought, come on, don't give up. Don't just turn it all inwards to perfection of the self. Mm-hmm. And again, my music is a call to action in a way, to saying, if you're a human being, it behoves all of us to help people who have less than we do. And I'm really ill and I can still manage it. So I do feel a bit judgmental sometimes, Susanna, because I'm like, if I'm still out there marching and you're not shielding and you're not on immunosuppressants, you don't have this crappy disease. So again, the album's actually helped me a lot, because what's coming back is a lot of hope, and people saying the album has brought, the words that keep coming up are joy, hope, solace, belief. People are saying, I feel less alone. Thank you for connecting with me. Thank you for not forgetting me. Yeah. So even though I can't be out there as much as I was, marching, protesting, I can still write music that hopefully speaks to people and gives them something real. That's really important to me.
Yeah, absolutely. How has the, pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, how has that changed how you write music? I imagine you used to be able to go out and talk to different musicians and have them involved in it. Are you still able to do that, or has it changed?
That's so interesting, because I'm on this quite emotional journey at the moment, because what I've realized doing this album is that I pretended to be well for a really long time when I was very unwell. I have tried to literally walk in the realm of the healthy and go, don't worry about me, nothing wrong with me, stand back, nothing to see. Yes, I can do a 12-hour recording day. Yes, I can be with an orchestra and then I'm sick for 5 months afterwards, but I won't tell you. There was so much pretense in how I lived. And I made myself really, really, really poorly. I nearly died in 2022. I think because I just burnt out in all kinds of ways. The games industry had chewed me up and spit me out. Politically, I was trying to do everything, fight every corner for everybody. And I think if there's anything good that's going to come out of how my life has changed, is I think authenticity is an overused word, but I think I'm finally admitted to myself, age 52, that I'm really sick, and there isn't going to be a post-pandemic for me, actually. There isn't going to be this grand return. There isn't going to be going to London 3 times a week and flying out to LA, and all those things were wonderful in some ways, but also almost kept me a prisoner in other ways. And being forced to shield made me realize there is still a life that I can enjoy. That is a bit isolating sometimes. That is is difficult, but there's also like I made a garden during the pandemic from nothing, and it's stunning, and I'm out in it every day. And the friends that I thought I had weren't friends. They were kind of clients. They were part of the Jessica Curry looking after train, choo, choo, choo. And the people that are left, and there aren't very many, are real friends. And I think a lot of people are going through this post-pandemic there's been this big shift in what do I want? What can I do? What do I want to give? What don't I want to go back to?
Yeah.
And I think the album's almost part of that. I've always had really big offers from large record companies, from AAA games, and I don't want to do it. And self-releasing Shielding songs was a reminder that I'm old, but I have a punk spirit. I do. It's kind of like the equivalent of a zine. I like doing stuff myself. I can write back to every fan that emails me because I'm at a scale of success where that is still manageable. And that brings me great joy. Reading the emails that I'm getting about Shielding songs are the highlight of the whole. That's why you do it.
Absolutely, it is.
So I don't think there is this big, I'm going to be recording a multi-million-pound game again. Maybe there will, but I don't feel it at the moment. I feel a slower, kinder to myself. Kindness to other people was a problem. Kindness to myself, I wasn't so hot at. So that's kind of what I'm focusing on. And I think there will be different music that comes out of that probably.
Thanks for coming on the show. I love that we were able to connect online. Isn't it?
Me too. And again, as an ongoingly ill person, I've had a lovely connection today that isn't possible really still for me out and about. And that is hugely important for my well-being and mental health and feeling seen and not forgotten and connected. So yeah, it's amazing, I think. I thank bloody God for it. So please take this as the genuine compliment that it is. You're a lovely interviewer.
Oh, thank you. And you're so easy to talk to, so that's part of it.
You're really responsive, you're really kind, you ask intelligent questions, but you're so warm.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, it's honestly, it really, because I used to do a radio show on the BBC before the pandemic, and it's really hard to be a good interviewer. That's what I learned.
Yeah, it is.
It's really hard.
Yeah, no, it's a real art form in itself.
Actually, it's when you feel confident enough to listen and let it meander.
Yeah, exactly.
That's when the gold comes, I think. But I've really enjoyed it with you.
So, where can people listen to your new album?
So, it's available on Bandcamp to buy digitally, which is amazing if people do that. It's also out on vinyl on Bandcamp, and so I got 100 pressed. They went in the first hour, so I'm now behind. I'm getting more pressed, which is really nice. It was lovely. I didn't think anyone would buy them, but everyone did. And they're now going to be on pre-order. And it is available on Spotify, which I love, but I'm really guilty of it. We all are, but it's currently, I think, 0.003 pence a stream. So it takes a lot of streams to earn any money. So if people are feeling generous, buying it on Bandcamp means that I can continue to self-fund more music and write more stuff. So that's always really appreciated. But I also understand we all use Spotify.
They have us hooked.
Oh, they do. They knew what they were doing, baby. It's so tempting, isn't it? To have the world at your fingertips.
Right there, it's easy. It's usually already up.
Yeah.
So, do you have like a YouTube channel or a web page or
I don't. I'm jessicacurry.co.uk on the web, and I'm also on Instagram with the most obscure handle that even I can't remember. I think very bad at self-promoting. It might be underscore Jessica Curry underscore. I'm on Instagram. Search me up if you're interested. I post very random things.
great? No selfie stick?
Think, think. No Brighton selfie stick quite yet. Think confused British pensioner feeling their way through technology, and you've got my Instagram feed. It's very lo-fi but quite charming.
Okay, I will find you. I cannot wait to see it. And
Thank.
do you have any other projects coming up that we should keep an eye out for?
Well, I've just started a very tiny new game studio with husband Dan because we were running the Chinese room together. It got absolutely massive. It ran the success. It's a very nice problem to have, but it was over 100 people. We just were managing, we weren't making. So we've moved on from the Chinese room and we've started a very tiny micro game studio called Studio Foundling, which kind of ties into all the things we've been talking about. This idea of this little lost baby
Oh,
finding its way. So I think there's going to be a small game and some music for that soon. Well, not soon, but we've started.
that's really exciting. Well,
Thank you.
I have so many questions about game music, actually. I hope we get to speak again because
Yeah, I'd love to talk
I don't
again.
know anything about the world of game music, and yet I feel game music and film is where new music lives today,
I completely agree.
and I would just love to know more about it.
I think there's some really exciting stuff happening in that realm.
Okay, well, I will anxiously await to hear that, and
Thank you, Susanna.
for joining me, and I hope you have a cooler day ahead of you.
It's so hot. I think it's having the headphones on as well. You've been amazing. Thank you so much for your time today.